Yes, guys, you know what time it is. It's your boy Jack here at the Irish Hotspur, joined by the lovely Ash and Ben. Dave, as we were discussing in the background, is still a bit under the weather. I think he was celebrating that Brighton win a bit too much. I think maybe his top four hopes are still alive, so he just couldn't even handle it, couldn't even fathom it. And also, Spurs just didn't even ruin our weekend. Maybe that was also something he's just not used to. Just maybe his own, kind of immune system wasn't even used to that sort of thing. But joined by a good panel here. We're not going to go on for too long, but we do have some good sort of kind of news and stuff to kind of get stuck into and maybe also get a bit ahead of ourselves as we like to do on this channel. But joined by Ash and Ben. Ash, I'll start with yourself. How are you doing?
I'm good, my bro. I'm here. I'm alive. And yeah, off the back of a win. So bring on the wins. Bring on the wins.
Bring on the Bournemouth, and then maybe after that, bring on the pain. But Ben, how are we?
We're all healthy. That's the main thing. Tottenham, I'm sure we'll get into in a bit, but look, I'm all good. So as long as I'm healthy, that's all I can ask for at the moment. So let's keep it that way.
That's all you can ask for. It's all you can ask for after the holidays as well. Good to see plenty of you lovely folks in the chat. I actually am going to be concerned in terms of time for Champions League later, but also we have Ben's charger can only last for so long, everybody. So we also want to be, consider the time. But I see Ariel in the chat. Mateo, it's good to see you. Wayne Bonner, Derek Smith, Black Wolf is in here. Good to see you. Tony, Andy Wen, Mia's in here. Good to see you always, Mia. Welsh Gal's in the house as well, saying I'd like to see Brian Hill back, more of Sar and Skippy, Richie more minutes, and Spence be given a chance. I like to see Hill Messi being brought up there. Welsh Gal, good to see you as well, Zoe, and then plenty more in the house. AE and Phil Coyce, the mighty Phil Army. You and I had a pretty late chat last night, Phil, and he says big up to Jack in the panel. Get well soon, Davo. Get Maddison in and play a 4-2-3-1 system back to the Tottenham of old. Phil Army, hashtag Coyce. Big yourself up, Phil. But everybody, if you're already in here, just asking this of you, please smash that like button. Keep getting your comments in here. Feel free to ask us anything. I'll try my best to sort of, keep the discussion going and kind of keep this sort of live kind of chat going. But as well as I do want to keep you guys engaged. But if you do want to skip the queue at any stage, feel free to throw it in a super chat. It's a great way to support the channel. But everybody, we're going to get straight into it for kind of the sake of time and everything. We're going to start and what kind of the weird news that I was discussing in the background, where I'm actually shocked we are weirdly the front runners on sort of the James Maddison kind of race. Maybe I'll go to Ben first on this, because I know, Ben, you do have to keep up to date on this sort of news. Do you feel like the James Maddison race, if Spurs were the front runners, do you feel like it's a bit odd that Spurs are kind of putting their kind of intentions down so early before they've even identified a manager?
Well, it's an interesting one, to be honest, because I was speaking to someone who was actually speaking with Paratici out in Israel during our pre-season tour when I was out there in the summer. And I heard someone saying similar words when he was speaking to him at the World Cup, that Paratici was organizing these signings, never mind who the manager was. He's just looking to build a future for Spurs. He's looking to bring in a good caliber of player into Spurs, which for me doesn't really seem like the best way of doing things. Because for me, I think you should be buying players specifically for the manager and specifically for what the manager and the system you want to play. So it's a bit odd, that for me. So, I mean, it's not really surprising that we're still going for players that we don't have a manager, albeit we don't have a director of football either at the moment. But I think that it's good for me to see that we are trying to buy good players, right. But I'd prefer for us to maybe wait for a manager to come in and see what players that he wants for his system. He can gauge the squad and see what he needs. But on the flip side of that, we do need a creator. We do need a number 10, and we do need someone that could potentially combat Kulusevski on that right-hand slot. So no matter who the manager is, I think James Maddison probably does fit the bill.
Yeah, but we've made this mistake before, though, right? When it comes
Mhm.
to maybe identifying players before the manager comes in. And I know James Maddison is a great player, and we'll discuss later if he's maybe I'll just ask this right away, Ben, as a follow up. Is James Maddison sort of good enough of a player that basically any manager should need and want to use him and should find a place for him? Is he that good of a player, do you think?
I mean, when you're looking at the different systems that we can play, the system that we're playing now, the Antonio Conte system, I think he can fit in there in terms of combating Kulusevski for that role. You move into a Pochettino system, I think he can play that number 10 perfectly well. I think like when you're looking at all the different systems, I think he can play in more or less all of them. So the quality of the player is right up there. I actually rate Maddison really highly, and I think that he would be an absolute talent to bring into the club.
Okay.
So, yes. I would say bring him in regardless.
Okay. I feel like for me, Ash, it goes both ways where it's like, yes, you want to think that guys like Paratici or at least Spurs are maybe identifying players, right, for like a certain style of play or a certain system, kind of like maybe Brighton do, you could say, like, right, they're always a step ahead of the game. They seem to have like a conveyor belt of players coming through that no matter what will sort of fit that system and fit maybe how they want to play and, the type of football they play over there. But with Spurs, it's hard to really trust us. I think that we're in that sort of position like right now. So what do you think? Like, is James Maddison just being brought in just to be brought in? Or do you trust Spurs that, Spurs are looking at a manager and as well as sort of like thinking that James Maddison will fit in with the new manager? Do you trust them?
I think for a while now we've been looking at Maddison. I don't think it comes to many Spurs fans surprised that we're going in for him because he's a player that we've looked at since maybe Norwich. The club's been looking at him and monitoring his progress. And the type of player he is, if we are to go back to that attacking DNA, as they do say, then he's going to be that player that kind of fits
then.
that mold. Do you know what I
Make us
mean?
proud.
Yeah. So for me, like Maddison, I look at the positions he can play. He has played centre mid before. He has played on the right of midfield. He has played as a right wing forward, a left wing forward. He has played as a 10. He's played as a 9 as well. When certain strikers weren't available, he's actually played as a 9. So he just shows that he's a player that he's multi-talented, multifaceted, and he can play quite a few positions, as Ben was saying earlier. And Spurs have been missing that player that has absolute quality ever since Eriksen left. We need someone that can kind of pass the ball with quality, and also that can see it as well, that has vision. And in terms of like on the ball, he's a person that he doesn't shy away from the ball, and he's good in tight areas as well. And when I watched him live, I saw him at the Wembley Stadium when we moved there temporarily. And the first thing that got me about Maddison was his confidence on the ball, his first touch, his ability to look around and pick out his teammates. Always wanted the ball. Whether he would be that guy at Spurs would have to wait and see, because at Leicester he's the main man, and when you're the main man, people just literally give you the ball. A bit like Kane. If Kane moved to a different Premier League side, would he still be the main man at a different side? So it's interesting, but it's definitely a player that all fans have been crying out for, like a player that can literally that would stop Kane from dropping deep. If Kane was to stay on and we had Maddison, he could be the player that could find Kane, and then imagine Kane scoring more goals. Like, it's unheard of, right? I mean, but if you've got Maddison in the side and he's playing just behind him in that attacking midfielder, then he's going to help free Kane. He's going to help free up Son as well. And but like you guys were saying, like for me, I'm like, this is wild. Is Paratici the manager? Because like the way I'm thinking, is Paratici the manager or is Levy the manager? Because we've got no manager, but we're linked with players. So I'm thinking, what's going on here? Like when we get a manager in, and they're like, yeah, I want 4-4-2. We're screwed. What's going on? 4-4-2. How are we going to fit these players in that we're buying in for already for a manager's not even there?
What's quite strange though, Ash, just to cut you off, I'm sorry, but I am kind of weirdly satisfied with some of the players we've been linked with recently, and I've been satisfied with a lot of the managers we've been linked with. So I am kind of confused as to who is running the operations, because I'm not dissatisfied with anything that has been. Of course, I'm unpleased with the fact that maybe we could act sooner when it comes to bringing in a manager over that international break to replace Antonio Conte. I think we probably could have acted sooner on that. But with the guys that we've been linked to on the manager list, and also the players that we've been linked to, of course, this is all hearsay. Of course, it's all just journalism at the end of the day. But not dissatisfied. I'm not displeased with what
Yeah,
we've
no,
been
at the end
linked
of the
with. So I
day,
am confused if it is Paratici or Levy.
if at the end of the day, if that's the quality that we're going for and it's not going below Maddison, I'm all for it. I'm not gonna lie to you. If we're gonna just go for Maddison's and aboves, I'm gonna be like, yeah, do you know what I mean? Keep it coming. But at the same time, the skeptic in me is like, I wonder if they use Maddison as a little bit of good press, a good PR, do you know what I mean? To kind of alleviate the fans, because, well, let's face it, we're not really in a positive mood at the moment. So that Maddison rumor is coming
happens
out
every time this year. This time every year, these kind of rumors
The
come
season
out.
ticket renewal kind of rumor,
Every
isn't it?
single time these kind of rumors come out, every single year. And I don't know, have we ever bought a player that we were rumored on like around this time of year? I don't know, because it's always like massive rumors, and then fast forward down the line, once the season ticket rules and all done, oh, it's broken down.
Like a Bastoni last season, maybe might have been the guy, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like was probably the one we were kind of linked with early. Never came to fruition. Of course, I see what you mean on that one. What I would say, though, just quickly on Maddison, is I do feel like he does fill that Eriksen void that has been never really filled ever by the likes of Spurs. I think we've tried our best with the likes of Lo Celso and Ndombele. They both have sort of failed in doing so, but he does have that sort of ability to maybe pick up the ball from deep, and he's not like, I think, solely like just a number 10. I think he could be able to just drop deep and pick up the ball and spray passes. He doesn't have to always be able to sort of just occupy that number 10 role. He can also be able to find people in behind. Maybe in comparison to Eriksen as well, though, he probably doesn't have as good of free kicks, but he might have that sort of goal in him that maybe Eriksen didn't have as often as you could say probably James Maddison does. So there's that to consider as well.
He does have a good free kick, doesn't he, Maddison? I thought he's got a top free kick.
Would you say Eriksen's was better maybe when he was at Spurs, or is Maddison's really that good? I'm not sure, though.
Eriksen kind of fell off when it came to free kicks, if I'm being honest with you.
I like it, though, if James Maddison's better than him in that department as well. So maybe he brings that goal that Eriksen never really brought, too.
You know what I heard about Maddison? I heard Maddison doesn't like training. Like, when it comes to training, he's a bit of a lazy one. And I heard that was like one of the reasons why kind of
good friends with Dele Alli, right?
Well, this is it. So this is another question. Like, it's interesting. This is why I'm not really sold on this kind of like Maddison deal. Like, as much as I want it to be true, I'm like, smells of Levy. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I don't know.
Well, it would smell of Levy, Ash, wouldn't it? Because we heard in the summer, from the last summer, that he wanted to bring him in. Conte vetoed it. And why would Conte veto a player like? There's got to be a reason why Conte would veto a player like Maddison, because he was only saying a few months before that how much he needed a number 10.
Yeah. It's true. There.
Can I ask a question to you, Ben? Do you feel like Maddison gets into any 11 in the Premier League just quickly, just to judge maybe his quality and maybe where he's come from? Because I used to not really I'm not even the biggest James Maddison lover now, but I feel like I kind of have developed a lot of respect for maybe the last season or two that he's had, because it feels like he would be a guy that would dip in and out of form, kind of like Wright would be hot for a few weeks, disappear for a few afterwards. But what do you make of James Maddison right now? Do you feel like he gets into almost any 11 in the Premier League?
Don't think he gets into Man City's team with.
Is he a top 4 player?
I don't think he gets. I think Odegaard's better than him, so I think Odegaard gets into Arsenal's team over him. But I think he would probably get into any other team apart from those two. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think because my friend asked me the other day, he's like, "Why is man rating Maddison so much? Is he even that good?" I said, "No, brother, he's levels." But you've got Grealish. He says, "Right, is he better than Grealish?" I was like, "Ooh, Grealish. Ooh, nah, Grealish that dribbling." Maddison hasn't got the dribble that Grealish has got. You know, like one-on-ones. Grealish is different gravy, is different sauce. So I was like, nah, maybe not. And then he's like, then Foden. I was like, ooh, nah, Foden. He's just, I don't know, like, where like you start comparing players and like, but I agree with Ben, like outside of like maybe Arsenal and City, I think he gets into most. But you know what it is? He's just got that guile. I can't explain it. Stats won't show you, definitely. You have to watch him as a player. Like, he just literally has it. The je ne sais quoi, the X factor, the whatever it is, he's a confident lad. And when it, like, you could just tell a baller. When you look at a baller, you're like, nah, he's a baller. He's a baller. He's just
what I like about him is that he can drop deep like Eriksen, would for Spurs, and instead of Kane, taking that role, which he probably feels often kind of like a bit sort of reluctant to do all the time. I think he does enjoy dropping deep, but he doesn't want to do it all the time. Maddison can be that guy to sort of take that sort of pressure off of him. Just quickly though, lads, and maybe I'll start with Ash here on this. Do you see potentially Ndombele or Lo Celso being given a 10th chance to take the creative midfield spot this summer? What do you think?
If no one takes them, like, it's a reality we have to face. If no one takes them, then what? We're just gonna like freeze them out and make them train with the under 23s. They're on big wages, so there is every possibility that, I'm not saying they're gonna start. Don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you might see them on the bench. Do you know what I mean? But it depends on the manager and what type of manager we get. If we get a manager that, like a man-to-man, not man-to-man, pause, like a person that can motivate players, and get into the air. Because remember when Poch came, when Poch had Dele Alli, like, he knew what type of character he was getting with Dele Alli. And it's no surprise, as soon as Poch is out of Dele Alli's ear, he's just not the same player. He's not the same character. And I feel the same with like a player like Ndombele from the streets of France.
I haven't heard that in a while.
He's probably know this characteristic. And Poch is a big on personality. He's big on psychology. And a bit like Nagelsmann. And so he's a man that, he can get the best out of players. He knows like when to push a player, when not to push a player. He knew Eriksen had turned. He said, no, I can't really deal with Eriksen. I know he needs to get out. So I feel like he knew, and he didn't get a chance to really use Ndombele in that fashion. So it depends on the coach. Some coaches just don't have the time and energy. They just want ready now players. And the way he is, the way his gait, it looks like he's not trying, but it's just his gait. It's just the way he runs and stuff. That's how he looks. And so certain managers, I know as a fan base, we have like emotional ties. And we're like, no, as soon as he walked off for the FA Cup.
Yeah, I feel like he's a player that the fans wouldn't take back.
But the manager will come in, whoever it is, they might see him in training and think, hang on, Harry, you never know, we might get Harry Redknapp. And Harry might be like, hey, hang on a minute. Oi, who's that? Like, you know what I mean? Oi, get him on, let me stick him on. Oi, Ndombele, give it to Kane. Just give it to Kane, and that's it. That's what you got to do. So I'm not ruling it out. Like, whether I don't think he should be in our starting 11. I'm a big fan. But I think it just depends on the coach. I think he could be there and thereabouts on our bench, like depending on like FA Cup, Europa League, or Champions League, dare I say? But yeah, Europa League, Conference League. They might stick him up. They might stick him in the squad. That's what I'm saying. That's all.
I've heard something.
How are you going to give him minutes off the bench if he gasses out after 5 minutes? You know what I mean? Like, the guy's fitness, he can't last.
He's like a Diego Costa at 60 minutes. You just have to take him off.
That's why Napoli been bringing him on with 20 minutes to go. That's why Napoli been smart. They're like 20 minutes left. All right, now bring him on now. Do you know
Did
what I
any
mean?
of you read the Ali Gold article today? It was quite interesting. He was talking about all the loan players.
Yes, I was just about to ask you this, Ben. What did you think of Ndombele's release clause? Did you see that? The Champions League finish, if like Napoli finish? Yeah, take it away.
Yeah, so Ali Gold says there's an option to buy for about £26 million at the end of it. But if Napoli make the Champions League, which looks like they've pretty much done it already, that he thinks there could be an obligation for Napoli to buy them if they make Champions League football. So that would be a massive, massive thing for us if that was true.
Yeah.
It certainly
Okay.
would take a
Possible
big
he
chunk
gets
out
on
of a
it.
Maddison price, or would take a big chunk out of also a player Ugarte. Plenty of people are talking about in the chat. We've been linked to as well. A Uruguayan midfielder, I believe, over at Sporting. He looked like an absolute baller against the likes of Arsenal in that game because he was also doing it in a two-man midfield, kind of in a similar situation that we are in. So it shows that he is a sort of all-action kind of midfielder that he can do a lot of sides of the game. I really liked him. And honestly, even the red card that he got, I thought was actually quite classy. But would you? But Lo Celso, I feel like he's just not even good enough really to even take that creative spot because even since going back to Villarreal, the club that he did have a pretty good spell at for his stage, he's kind of, I think, fallen to injury a lot, if I'm not mistaken. Didn't even get called up for the Argentinian team. So he would have to
Romero
make a
wants him
real
back.
impression to come back, too.
Yeah, you
Romero
know what?
wants him back. Did you see the
For
Instagram post
yeah.
from Romero? See you soon here, my friend. No, you won't, mate.
Hill Messi also
Get
wished
outta
him
here,
a happy
man.
birthday as well on Instagram. Lo Celso,
Hey, Messi was rating him, you know. Messi was like,
Yeah.
listen, this Lo Celso guy, he's like, if it wasn't for him or something mad, like, right, he gives me the balls that I need. Pause. But yeah, like, right, I don't know. But for me, Lo Celso, I just think we could do better. I know he's hardworking, he's very active, and like he just runs with the ball a lot. But for me, in that position, you need more of end product, whether it be assisting or big chances created or scoring goals. He just didn't bring enough of that. And when it comes to flair, he's not a guy that I look to in terms of like someone that can either beat players or do something a bit special. You know, like when teams are defending deep and you just need someone to kind of unlock that defense. Lo Celso wasn't really that guy for me. But I just feel like we could do better. Do you know what I mean? Similar to Ndombele, I think we could, like, as good as some people may think they are, and some of the managers might want to give them a chance. Me personally, I just think there's better players, better quality that are out there in Europe that we could buy now today, and they could do
clean
a job.
break can be better
Yeah,
too,
clean
right?
break. That's all. Yeah, that's it. A clean break.
Yeah. Don't
Yeah,
give us
yeah,
another
yeah.
chance.
Not feel like we kind of misused maybe Lo Celso, and we kind of wanted to use him as that creator, that number 10, that one that does the link-up play. Do you not think maybe he would have been more adequate playing him a bit deeper, like we play Bentancur or Højbjerg, someone like that?
Yeah, no, yeah, he does kind of give me that kind of feel because he's very busy-bodied. He's very like combative. He's very like physical. He's got that South American kind of hustle and bustle about it. Never give up, and he does like dribble with the ball, carries the ball quite well. So him next to maybe like a Bentancur could have maybe worked, but I just feel like because of the injuries, for me, injuries is a massive thing. Like you could say about that with a lot of our players that, you know, if they weren't injured so much, which goes back into the Maddison question, because, you know, lots of people say he's injury prone. He gets injured quite a lot in the season. That's something I look at as well. But I feel like out of the 30 games that Maddison could have played, he played 23. So 7 games. He hasn't been out for that long. So that's why I give him a little blight. I think, right, you know what? 7 games isn't too bad to be missing. Like, I would prefer you to play all 30 games, but guess what? Like, he's not as injury prone as everyone's making him out to. And out of those games, 9 goals, 6 assists. Like, do you know what I mean? What more do you want? But I just vote for Lo Celso. Like, in that double pivot, maybe, but I just want a little bit more.
If he doesn't even fill in the creative midfield role that we kind of need filling, then I feel like then there's even less of a case for him to come into the squad. Probably, I see what you guys mean though, right? Where a lot of people seem to be showing a bit of love for Lo Celso in the chat, where they are kind of saying, right, a bit of, you know, maybe he was misused. Injuries, of course, came up in kind of inconvenient times as well. And also, if I'm not mistaken, right, guys, like as much as I completely got it wrong on the Eriksen free kicks, maybe I'll get this one right going back in the memory bank. Lo Celso, he did maybe have a better spell when playing a bit deeper under Jose. Is that not right? Didn't we have a few injuries back there? And that was probably when he looked.
Funnily enough, Jose was the only one to get a good tune out of both these players. And
he was top manager.
That's what you're saying. Like you're talking about these players. Oh, they will never work under Jose. They're going to ruffle a few players. Jose got the best out of them, and that period just before the lockdown, just before football stopped, when we had mad injuries, Son was getting injured, Kane was injured. Lo Celso was playing a lot deeper, and he was pulling us out of a few problems. I mean, he was the only one really standing out for the team at that time.
Yeah. I think Foggy Foam, though, has transitioned us quite well into the next sort of topic, sort of related, right, to James Maddison, and we'll, get rid of our sort of delusion that he's coming here. It's maybe more just, let's say, if a creative midfielder is being brought into the club, do Spurs maybe have too many of the same type of midfielders? Because it has been brought up before, right, that Spurs have too many guys that are a bit too similar to each other. So what do we think, lads? Do we maybe go for something where we do have to think about getting rid of some guys this summer? Perhaps Skip maybe getting sent out on loan, Sarr being sent out on loan, Basuma, do you just sort of cut it now, or do you give him a second chance? Højbjerg, not really everybody's favorite, a very divisive sort of player. I mean, I have a lot to say on kind of each and everybody, but what do you think, Ben? Because if we are going to bring in creative midfielders, do you think we have too many midfielders already that are kind of too similar to each other?
Well, it depends what kind of system that we're going to be playing next season. I think if we're going to be sticking with the system that we've got now, I think that, yeah, we do have enough midfielders. I still think that there could be potentially room for one more. But if we're going to like the Pochettino 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3 or something like that, I think Højbjerg might be a bit surplus to requirements at times. I don't think he's good in possession. I don't think he's going to be able to play possession-based football. I think he's much better in the transitions, looking for that one killer ball and stuff like that for Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. So it very much depends on the system you're playing. But I think that a lot of the midfielders that we have now can play in alternate systems. But I fear for Højbjerg if we do get a more possession-based attacking manager.
What do you think, Ash? Before I kind of come in on a lot of these sort of various midfielders, do you think we have just simple as too many midfielders? If we are going to go after a creative midfielder, can we just squeeze him in and be fine with already the plenty of other midfielders we have, or do we have to consider kind of getting rid of some this summer?
I think like the next midfielder we get in, I think with these midfielders, you're right, they are all very similar. And I think sometimes that's part of the reason why we've been, we've conceded with a lot of possession, because the style of when you're like a midfielder and you've got a characteristic or a makeup of a player that likes to defend, or you're quite competitive, or you think defense first, because some players, they're more attack minded, so they have attack first in their mind, so that's what they want to do. So naturally they pull up in the position, they pull up the pitch a bit more further forwards. And some players, they're a bit more cautious in nature, so they'll sit back a lot. And sometimes a lot in the season, we've conceded a lot of possession because of the type of midfielders that we have, and we drop off and we allow other teams to have a lot of possessions because of the makeup of the team that we have. A lot of midfielders, I know they're meant to be double pivot, but out of the double pivots, they're more defensive, in my opinion, minded first rather than attacking minded the other way around. So I feel like if we can, I think there's always room for more midfielders. If they have more potency in going towards at the attacking end. They can still defend, do you know what I mean? They can still mix it up, but I just feel like the players that we have in possession, they're not always comfortable in possession, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And so they pass the buck. So what I see Højbjerg do a lot.
You don't think any of them take any real onus, right? In fact, what I would say, what it is, it's none of them take real onus in the game, but part of that onus is that I think they fall in and out of taking risks, right? Like I feel like Højbjerg is capable of playing a brilliant pass, but it's almost like certain games he'll just sort of kind of fall into that rhythm of like just sort of passing sideways and whatnot, and then he won't take that risk to sort of break the lines of the defense. Whereas a guy like Maddison, a guy like whoever creative midfielder that you may want, probably does that more often than the midfielders we have right now.
That's what I mean by the makeup and DNA.
Yeah. So, I don't even think it's that with lack of risk with Højbjerg. I think it's like sometimes you get amazing games from where he's combative, he's passing on point every single game. He's in the right areas of the pitch at the right time every single time. But then every so often, especially when you get him to play 2 games in the week, you just see a lack of care from Højbjerg. You see him pulling out of challenges. You see lazy passes. Even his sideways passes become lazy. And we just give up too much possession in those central areas of the park. And I think it's those performances that are coming a bit too often now for Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. And it's becoming a bit frustrating. That's why I'm saying when you have a possession-based manager, I'm not sure if Højbjerg can be that one that's starting week in, week out, every week for you. Because these games come too often for me.
Yeah, for me, I think he is a safe passer. I've seen so many times in the game where there's an option for him to do a hard pass, and he's gone for the easier option. And he's literally either passed it backwards, So he's passed it backwards and puts pressure back on the defense, like your Eric Dyers or your Longleys. And then they've passed it back on to Lloris. Lloris is terrible. And that basically makes the other team press onto our wing backs. And then it just capitulates from there. There's certain balls I'm like, it's not even a hard pass, but because he knows if he doesn't get that pass right, he loses possession in that particular area. And then he's the reason why we don't push up the pitch a lot of the time, in my opinion, from what I've seen. But if you've got like a James Maddison, like, and that's the thing I noticed about him when I watched him live, he's just got that guile. Like, he's very daring. He's just got that you know, like some people just naturally, they just got that kind of devil on their shoulder. He's that more person that he will take that risk, whereas Højbjerg will play it. And we've got quite a few players in that mold, if that makes sense. So I'm always up for like.
Does a James Maddison need, at the end of the day, though, does a James Maddison need a player like a Højbjerg kind of next to him or kind of with him, right, to do other sides of the game?
I don't think Højbjerg is as not combative, but like a destroyer. I think there's a room for a destroyer in the club. You know, someone that was.
You don't
like
think he is a destroyer? I think he was brought in originally to be the destroyer because that's what he was under Jose.
I think so. Yeah. I think he was originally brought to be a destroyer, but as time's gone on, I feel like he's not the destroyer that I thought he was. I'm being honest.
He's a box to box. That's what he is. He's a box to box.
Yeah, he is more of a box to box. Yeah, he is. And like, I just feel like we that void, someone next to Maddison, if it was in the two, I think you'd get more of a destroyer. But someone that doesn't mind to be like pressed in certain areas, because you need someone that's press resistant as well. That it's not going to wet the bed as soon as someone like runs at them. Do you know what I mean?
I find it interesting that you kind of say, yeah, you saw that sort of destroyer originally, but then that sort of started to fade. I'm with DTW here saying every team has a midfielder that does the dirty work and never gets recognition for it. I think at the end of the day, if we are going to go for a 3-man midfield, let's say theoretically with the next manager, could be Enrique, could be Poch, could be whoever, if they are going to deploy a 3-man midfield, and if there is going to be some type of anchor type midfielder who is maybe in some case kind of more the ball winning kind of destroyer of the team, I feel like Højbjerg does it almost as good as the rest of the players in the team, if not better. And maybe Basuma, we'll talk about him in just a second, but he would be kind of the guy you would think, right, could compete with him for that sort of spot because he's also very good at winning the ball back. But for me, I think Højbjerg, I think Bentancur would take maybe, I feel like what I like about Bentancur is that he's maybe very progressive with how he carries the ball. I kind of like how Bentancur, if he needed to, could make maybe more of those surging runs, kind of like not obviously as graceful and as beautiful as Moussa Dembele did it, but it's almost close at times with the ways that he can sort of carry it past people in the midfield. Højbjerg can't do that. Skip can't do that. Sarr, maybe one day you could see him doing that, but Bentancur does that better than anybody. So I wouldn't want him just kind of holding, back with the defense. Maybe someone like a Højbjerg, though, I'd be more comfortable with that because he loves winning the ball back. He was kind of originally brought in to sort of do the dirty work that no one else really was capable of doing, like Winks, Sissoko, Lo Celso, and kind of players like that. I do find it funny quickly, though, that Højbjerg is clearly such a divisive player because in the chat, everybody's either defending his name or calling him bang average. And when you bring up Lo Celso, there's a bit of love for the guy, which is just kind of makes you think, especially.
Yeah,
but he is a leader, though, as well. Like, and a lot of managers trust Højbjerg, too, and they've continued to play him. And that's another thing as well, where maybe he has dipped in and out, but I think if he has good midfielders alongside him, he can be an impressive midfielder. And also, last thing is, I do feel like he has improved each and every season since coming in since Jose. I think when he was brought in under Jose, he was really just more of a destroyer. Kind of last season, he absolutely stepped up, especially when Conte came in. And then this season, he's come in with goals and assists, more goals and assists than some of our forwards this season. So I don't know. I feel like Højbjerg is kind of gradually improving each season. And maybe if he was just given that destroyer role, which is a bit more simple, he could thrive.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't even know if we need that destroyer role, to be honest. I think if we're going to move to 4-3-3 or 3 in the middle, or 4-2-3-1 with 2 sitting and 1 in the number 10, I mean, I'd love to see a midfield 3 of Bentancur, Bissouma and Maddison a bit further forward. I think that would be like a dream field. And when you're looking at Bentancur and Bissouma, right, you're talking about 2 players that can equally go forward and equally defend as well. Because I think both of them are really tenacious tacklers. You talk about Bentancur before, how silky he is moving up the pitch. But I think he's a really tenacious tackler as well. And he can do it at both ends of the pitch. So And I think Basuma can do that as well. So I think that three in midfield, all three of them are kind of tenacious, and all three of them have nous going forward as well. So I think those three could be an actual dream to play together.
And just to add to that, Ben, before Bentancur got injured, he made the most tackles, even more than Romero.
That's
so
right.
That just destroys that Højbjerg. He doesn't get noticed for all the work that he's doing defensively. No, Bentancur was more a defensive midfielder. He won
this
the
season,
ball higher
he definitely
up.
has been. This season, he definitely has been.
He won the ball higher up. He won more tackles, more interceptions, and so. And at the back end of it, he started to score more goals as well. It started to flip over where he was getting more of the goals and he was getting more of the assists. So as an all-round midfielder, I think like what Ben says, Bentancur probably, and I think Højbjerg, someone that we wouldn't totally disregard, we keep him in the squad, definitely. It's just that sometimes his concentration dips, and we've seen it many times where, like Ben was saying, sometimes his passing will be a bit sloppy. And I understand why managers do like him, because managers like talkers, and he is the biggest talker on the pitch. Everyone, that you can't deny that.
Yeah.
He's always talking, and managers love that. A communicator, or almost like a manager on the pitch. That's what he does. So I think
if you were to look at it though, Ash and Ben, just this is, I think, an easy way to summarize what we're kind of debating here, because I am a big Højbjerg defender, but maybe a way to settle this really is, you look at the top teams, right? They all have that anchor midfielder. Maybe they do sort of different roles, different instructions, but they're all sort of a similar type of class and quality. You look at, sadly, Thomas Partey with the Gooners. You look at the likes of Rodri with Man City. And I think there are other midfielders out there. I think Man United, of course, they brought in Casemiro, right, as well. He's a quality, more defensive midfielder. Who can play that role in the next system? Is it Bentancur, Basuma, Højbjerg? Which one is maybe the best candidate for it, do you think?
For me, Bentancur.
Yeah,
oh, sorry, Ash, go on.
Yeah, no, I agree. Bentancur for me alongside Basuma. If you watch what Bentancur was doing, like the way he won the ball high up the pitch, as I was saying before, his football brain, he can intercept, and his actual tackling as well, his tackling ability, and then what he does with the ball afterwards. I think that's the most important thing as well. Sometimes he knew when to carry, and then sometimes he knew when to like hit that pass where you put it into your front three or you put it into your wing backs, etc., etc. Do you know what I mean? And I just feel like if we are going for the next level, like I'm not against Højbjerg, but I'm just thinking if we're trying to get to that next level, in my opinion, then I think that's the reason why we bought Basuma in. I assume that was the reason why we brought him in, because he's someone that once you get impressed, he can actually dribble and carry the ball and take on one or two players. And then also when it comes to defending and intercepting, if you just look at that Liverpool game in isolation, he was amazing when it came to the interceptions, when it came to like parrying the ball and using his body, getting away. He would shield his body and protect the ball in a different way, and then keep it simple. Because sometimes you want your players to, if you're an anchor man, sometimes you just want them to keep it simple. You don't want them to do too much. And I feel like that's what Basuma was really good at doing, and then Bentancur as well. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Does that answer the question? Or
no, I think it definitely does. And it's just whoever you think can play that role that you see all the other top teams have. Like there's going to be someone there that's going to be basically sitting deeper. There's going to be someone that's going to start the attacks from deep, kind of picking the ball up from the center backs as well. And then there's going to be somebody that's going to be that designated ball winner. Of course, you're going to have other guys that chip in and help out. But I am thinking, there is that sort of designated defensive midfielder. They might have different instructions. They might have sort of different maybe roles. But if we are going to go for a 3-man midfield, who's going to be doing the dirty work in the midfield? And that's who I'm curious. And a guy like Højbjerg has been brought in originally to do that. If I'm not mistaken, when you looked at his stats when he was brought in under Jose, he was basically practically the best defensive midfielder when it came to winning the ball back for us during that season under Jose. So if you're just asking him to do the bare minimum, he's definitely capable of it. But a lot of people do say, is he a bit of a limited midfielder, right? Can he be asked to do more than other things? And I feel like he's done it inconsistently this season. There have been games when in that 2-man midfield with Bentancur, he's looked like an absolute boss and has shown that he can run a midfield. And like Ben and maybe Ash have alluded to, then there are other games when you just don't see the same guy that you saw sort of last week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you're looking at the players that you mentioned, the Casemiros, the Thomas Parteys, the Rodris, Højbjerg ain't on that level, nowhere near that level, in my opinion. And I think that if we're looking to get someone on that level, first of all, it's going to cost way more than Levy is willing to pay, that's for sure. And second of all, I think that I would prefer to have two players there that can do different roles, one can sit in and go up, another one can sit in and go up, be a lot more fluid and a lot more unpredictable. That's what I'm looking at, to have Bentancur and Bissouma there. So you override maybe the fact that they've got a pure world-class phenomenon there, like a Casemiro, like a Rodri, like a Thomas Partey. We've got Bentancur and Bissouma where they might not be of the quality, but they can work as hard and produce different things on the pitch and be unpredictable.
And then just quickly then, I feel like we're getting rid of Lo Celso, we're getting rid of Ndombele. That frees up some room in the midfield, at least for the creative midfield role. But we need to get rid of some of these similar type midfielders. You guys seem to be saying kind of maybe moving on from Højbjerg. Does that mean still keeping around Bissouma, keeping around Bentancur? Do you keep Skip and Sarr, or do you loan one of these guys out? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, Ben, it's an interesting one, what to do with Skip and Sarr. I mean, I've seen big futures in both of them. Like, again, it all depends on, if we're going to assume that we're going to be playing a 3 in midfield, it all depends on what system that we're going to be playing. That's going to be the main sticking point here. I think Skip, I would actually prefer to keep Skip around than Højbjerg at the moment. I really fancy Skip. I think he's a top player. He's going to be a top player. Pape Matar Sarr, if he's going to have the similar amount of game time that he had when he's here this season, then I'll prefer to loan him out just to keep aiding his development, to be honest.
Interesting.
For me, it's the key word that Ben used in that midfield three, if we were to go into midfield three, is fluidity. And for me, when I watch Sarr, I just see a bit of everything. I see him being combative. His mobility or his athleticism allows him to get around the pitch and cover a lot of areas in the pitch. His actual football brain is not too bad either. Like, I think it's developing. It still needs a bit sharpening up a bit, but you can see that he's not afraid to like switch the play, because I see him like get balls and literally turn his body out and just switch the, and then you need that, and then play the long balls, short passes as well. He links up with players differently as well. And also, he's not afraid to shoot. Out of all those midfielders that I've seen, I see Sarr getting and trying to affect the game and trying to take a shot. Whether that shot's good enough, I think he needs to work on it a bit more. But I always see him trying to get forward and trying to shoot a lot more. So out of those midfielders, I wouldn't mind, if he was to get the starts, I wouldn't mind keeping him on. But if he wasn't, I agree with Ben. I think stick him out alone, because I'd hate for him just to be on the bench being wasted away. Similar with Skip. Skip needs games. So if we're not going to play Skip and he's not going to be a part of that midfield three, I would put him out on low again. I would. I just look for that fluidity. I like players, like Ben was saying, that are unpredictable. Say again? Someone's
got to stay for cover.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. If it was between the two, I'd say like I would loan out probably both Sarr and Skip. Yeah, I'll keep Højbjerg. And my main three would be Bentancur, Bissouma, and assuming that like if we got a
Can you loan out Skip though, considering the homegrown kind of vital role that he takes up in the squad, because he's from the youth academy, he's from
to be fair, you've got your Mundles there as well that are coming into the squad. So you've got your Divines, etc. So
Mundle's a winger though, no?
Mundle's a winger, but we're not going to utilize him as a midfielder as well. So is he not versatile enough that he could play in that position?
I thought Mundle was either going to come in as a winger or a wing back.
Yeah,
and
I think that's what it is.
For midfield.
Okay, fair enough.
I guess we can continue to use Alfie Whiteman as a chess piece in the whole homegrown scheme. Everybody, I'm just going to get to Ben Kaufman's member super chat here. He's been with us for 20 months now. Mr. Ben Kaufman has been with us. Big yourself up, sir. And he says, big up to Mr. Harris, Jacko, Ashy, and Top. Ben, big yourself up. The Ben Army is strong tonight, and the Ben Army is being represented, Mr. Kaufman. Hopefully you're keeping well. Hopefully you enjoyed your Passover as well. I was able to see, some festivities over the likes of here in the likes of Brooklyn, my friend. And yeah, I hope you're keeping well, Ben. And hopefully we can get you on Thursday maybe for a nice show. This one's going to be pretty quick, pretty easy. What's
You
that?
got to do the thing that Dave always does when Ben Kaufman's is a super chat.
I kind of do it a different way. Would you like it? You like to see my version of it?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. Can you smell what the cough is brewing? Can't do it in the same way Dave does. Dave does, of course, the Ric Flair kind of boom, which is just, I don't know. It's not, my vocal cords weren't blessed with that sort of ability, I think. But Mr. Kaufman, hopefully you're keeping well. 20 months of service. Thank you very much, my friend. And anybody else, feel free to throw in your member super chats. I'll keep an eye on it. Thank you very much to any of those members in the chat there. And if you do want to skip the queue, we are actually switching topics at the moment. So if you do want to skip the queue and bring up any sort of ideas that you feel like maybe weren't brought up in the whole Højbjerg midfield kind of debate with James Maddison and all that stuff, feel free to throw it in as a super chat. Great way to support the channel. But guys, switch over kind of gears to maybe the Brighton game and the chants that were ringing throughout the stadium. With the crowd singing for Pochettino and Levy out, will Daniel Levy feel more obligated to bring Poch back to appease the fans? And also maybe Ben and Ash, any sort of inside stories from anybody you may know that was at the stadium? Or Ben, I'm not sure if you were doing the watch along or anything.
I was there. I was at the game, yeah.
You were at the game. Okay. So any inside stories? Tell me.
Not really, to be honest. I mean, there was a few Levy out chants doing in a few pockets of the ground. There was one really loud Levy out chant that kind of stopped really quickly, abruptly. It was really weird. It was like filtering around across the whole of the South Stand, and then it just quickly stopped. But it was quickly taken over by Maurizio Pochettino chants. When Stellini got sent off straight away, the whole of the South Stand was singing about Maurizio Pochettino. And that followed on from chants at away ends before the international break, and also after Milan in the Champions League at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. As everyone was walking out, they were singing for Maurizio Pochettino. So it's very clear what the fans want. I think when this usually happens, Daniel Levy does usually bow into fan pressure. So I got a feeling he's going to do everything in his power to bring Maurizio Pochettino back to the club. But I think it also heavily relies on this appeal date with Paratici. Because if Paratici wins his appeal, I don't know if he's going to want Pochettino at the club if he's going to keep his job. So I think a lot of it does rely on the Paratici court case in a couple of weeks.
I do. Yeah, I've heard that because he doesn't like the directors of football, like you brought up there, and Paratici doesn't have the best relationship with Pochettino, or he doesn't approve of Pochettino. I forget what it is.
It's relationship, but I think it's more the manager and the style of play that we're looking to do that he wants to do.
Okay, interesting. And what I would say about when it comes to Paratici, I have defended a lot of the players that he's brought in. I think he's been kind of on the money in that regard. But when it comes to maybe the managers, he has been a bit kind of, maybe I would say some of the rumors have been a bit inconsistent. But what do you make of kind of the Levy out as well as the Pochettino chants ringing throughout the stadium there, Ash? Do you feel like Pochettino, if that is being kind of sung so sort of obviously by the fans, does a guy like Daniel Levy look at that and maybe think of him more seriously then?
I don't know. I feel like Levy's a Pochettino fan, if I'm being honest. I think it's been well documented that they went on holidays together outside. They were eating dinners and stuff. Like outside their actual working relationship, they actually got on along, and he said it was the hardest decision he had to do. Like, not just on the professional level, but on a personal level. I had to separate the two, and to this day he kind of regrets getting rid of him. So I don't know if it's someone else on the board that their pride is at stake and they don't want to kind of go back on their word, and they feel like if they bring Pochettino back, it kind of goes against, it'll be admitting failure basically, that they got it wrong. And maybe that's the reason why, like, you hear names like Donna Cullen and stuff saying, she doesn't really want him in. So it may not just be a Paratici thing. It might actually be higher up as well. They're kind of like against it. But Levy, I think if Levy wants to save his skin, that would be the easiest way to just kind of appease the fans by getting him in. But I think when it comes to having the final say, he normally gets his way, to be fair. So if he really wants Poch back, he will get Poch back. He will. But I just feel like, I've said it before, I just feel like because the fans have gone through a manager like Mourinho with a win now manager, a defensive coach in Nuno, and then a kind of win now manager in Conte, all three of them have been quite defensive. Like, one's more counter-attackive and one's more like, just defensive minded. All of them are defensive minded at the end of the day. And the fans say, look, if we can't win a trophy, at least let us enjoy the football. So I feel like they want entertaining football. And I think that's the reason why that was the last time they had like an attacking manager involved, which was Pochettino. That's the reason why they're singing out his name. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, if Paratici's appeal, gets approved and, he's still there, then yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if that happens or if we get someone else.
Is it silly to incorporate fan influence? Because while maybe Daniel Levy, right, is obviously, I mean, he's not well liked and obviously probably could benefit from appeasing the fans. Is it also silly though? Like, is it silly to incorporate the influence of the fans, like when making these type of decisions? Or is it something that you should consider maybe when going into the, Ben, what do you think? Like, should the fans kind of voice be somewhat brought into consideration?
I think the fans' voice should always be brought into consideration, but I don't think it should be the defining factor on why you make that decision. And why I say that is, like, you look at all the other clubs, right? They've all got proper decision makers in place underneath the chairman to get to the right decision. They got teams of people doing that. Whether or not we have teams of people doing that is remains to be seen. But what we do have is we've got a super power hungry chairman that wants to micromanage every facet of the football club and wants to be key involved in every single decision this football club makes. So having said that, then maybe it is better for our fans to get more involved because we don't have a team of key people making those decisions. We've got a guy overseeing the key people of doing the key decisions and micromanaging them. And ultimately, he has the last say on what goes on. So maybe it is right for the fans to weigh in on this situation.
I completely agree. And, but maybe to be a bit of a devil's advocate, like you look at maybe Arteta out, right, was singing throughout the Arsenal fan base, right? And they absolutely cannot take credit, I think, for, the Arteta.
What's the difference there? The difference there is they've got a team of people making the right decisions, taking step by step at a process. We don't know who's going to be our director of football or manager tomorrow.
We can't trust the club are making the right decisions.
We can't trust anything that they do.
That's a good point and a good distinction. But at the time, right, was it the case that maybe Arsenal and the fans did trust what the operations were going on within the club, or did it just sort of come to fruition that maybe they were proven wrong? What do you think, Ash? Like, do you trust? Like, is it good to incorporate maybe the fans' sort of influence? Like when Daniel Levy gets a huge, resounding sort of kind of obvious statement from the fans of like Pochettino, right? Does he have to take that into consideration? Does he have to take that sort of influence into account? Or is it maybe silly to do that?
I think it's just down to the context. I think context plays a huge part in this because when Arsenal were like Arteta out, Tottenham were ahead of Arsenal. We were ahead of them. And they were quite envious. The pundits were saying, like, look at those Tottenham boys. They're doing everything right. They've got the academy right. The academy's got a pathway. The style of football they're playing is right. Where we are in the table, obviously, we were ahead of them. So, like, at the time, they just couldn't take it, another season of what they thought was failure. And then reverse to us now. Like with us, it's like, again, Arsenal, all of a sudden, they're top of the league. I can't believe I just said that. But yeah, they're top of the league. And our fan base, we're losing it. We're losing it. Had it that Arsenal not being top of the league and maybe slightly behind us, or, maybe they weren't doing as well, maybe we could stomach it a little bit more. But it just, on top of that, it's just the mess that we're in terms of like Ben was saying, with the whole Paratici debacle, the whole manager episode with Conte saying what he did and the way he's kind of left things, it's kind of like it's left a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouths. And to make it worse, when we were on top, we didn't actually utilize it. We didn't win any trophies at that time. So that makes it worse because even when they were in that bad spot, they were still winning FA Cups. They were still doing bits. Do you know what I mean? As bad as they were, they still got trophies. They still went to Wembley, had a good time out at Wembley, had a good day out, and they came home with the goods. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, when you take that all into consideration, you look at that context and you're like, boy, you know what? I can understand where the fans are coming from. We're just sick and tired of being sick and tired. Do you know what I mean? Like, when will it end? Like, poor football, poor results, no trophies. Your
When will it
North
end,
London
Levy?
North London rivals just taking a piss. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it hurts so much. I mean, I don't know what more to say. Like, it's just.
I think Ben was spot on when you basically said where if maybe Daniel Levy were to ignore the fan sort of influence, that would then mean he's been making the right decisions on a lot of cases and has been, maybe confident enough in his own sort of back staff and all the people behind him that he knows he doesn't need that sort of influence, right? But we all know he's in always hot waters when it comes to the fans. And right after the Pochettino chants, I believe the Levy out chants were heard as well. So it can be the case that he maybe can't ignore the fans, like maybe unlike other clubs like a Brighton or somebody, or like in the case of Arsenal at this moment in time, who probably have a track record for making the right decisions. They have maybe more of an excuse to sort of kind of tune maybe some of the influence from the outside and from the media out. Whereas Spurs, like, we're just not making the right decisions at this moment in time. So it is like probably best to appease the fans in some sense. But there's also appeasing the fans too much where you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. And then that might come back to bite you. But I do feel like he's not in the place like maybe other clubs are who have been making the right decisions to put themselves in the right positions, where he probably does need to take fans into consideration. That's definitely true.
I think, like, because the football's so poor as well, it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. Like, fans can get behind. Like, if we weren't playing so bad, I think you have a little bit of leeway. We've got no leeway. We're playing poor, and the results are poor. The only saving grace at the moment is maybe the position that we're in, that where we are on the table. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the only thing which is gonna kill fans in the end, because I think we can all see it. I don't know, us lot on the panel, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I don't see us making top four. So if we don't make it to top four, then I'm not going to be too heartbroken, because I've seen it coming from the way we've been playing. And what's been going off the pitch and what's been happening on the pitch, both have been, do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
I feel like whatever manager comes in, regardless of top four, knows that he's coming into a club right now that is in a bit of disarray and doesn't have really the strong foundations and background that a lot of other clubs have. There just isn't a lot of strong footing right now at Spurs. You don't have the future of Harry Kane secured. You don't even have the future of maybe other kind of top players at the club exactly certain and for sure. You look at the likes of Paratici, that doesn't help either. And also maybe needing a new director of football, or someone like a Greta Steinson might be given some type of promotion. But just even the whole scouting network at Spurs isn't exactly, concrete. It's just whatever manager is coming in. I think regardless of where we finish, they might need to know that they're going to get their hands dirty, and they might need to know that it's not going to be exactly the easiest of jobs. You're not walking into sort of a well-run, tight ship, type of club. You're going into a club that is not exactly making the right sort of moves and is maybe going a bit backwards in a lot of people's eyes. And maybe you debate that or not, but that is how a lot of fans see it at this certain stage. So you do have to know as a manager, you're going into a club that maybe on the outside, let's say if we finish top four, might look like they're headed the right direction, but there's always these other things in the background at Spurs that we know are in disarray. And so I think the manager needs to be hungry to be able to be here for a while. And so I'm thinking 4 to 5 years at least, Ash. And then also as well, that needs to come through a contract, right? We need to hear as a fan base, like, no speculation over like a renewal or something like that. We want to hear that the guy is here for at least 3 to 4 years, 4 to 5 years, and he's here to get his hands dirty, I think, at Spurs as well, because that's what it will take.
Fans don't even care about top four anymore. Like, some of the fans just like, they just don't even care. Like, they said, like, forget top four. We just want some football back. Do you know what I mean? And like you said, if Kane's not signing, Kane's our golden boy. Imagine a team of like, I don't know what it was. Someone said about 75% of our games have come from like Kane having the winning goal or decided goal. So you just take that out of the team, and then it's just like, it's not giving any fan any confidence that we could go on and do stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Forget good football. Forget getting results. We need our club to have a direction. That's what we need first. We need to get our club and have a literal direction. Then the other things will fall into place. But How can anything be sorted at this club without there's no leadership from the top down? It's absolutely rotten to the core. So I don't understand how anyone thinks that we can have a direction right now.
Certainly no. We are rudderless and don't have any direction. I would say though, like a way to help us would be, like I said, that type of manager that's hungry enough to maybe show Spurs the right pathway, or at least the pathway that they envision, because managers that are ambitious would come in, and they can't fix everything at the club. They certainly can't. But you look at what Ferguson has done. You look at what the likes of Klopp has done at Liverpool. You look at what Pochettino has done to us in the past. And of course, we've reverted back to our old ways, like since Poch has left in a lot of senses. But there still was that sort of period for a time where it looked like Spurs had an idea and it looked like things were kind of going on the right track, right? So a manager can't fix everything, I think, at a club, but a manager can sort of almost like guide you in the right direction, or at least in his eyes, point you in the right direction. And then it's up to also the ownership to trust that manager that he can guide you in that sort of in that path, right?
Yes, that's the key sentence there. Being an ownership needs to trust the manager fully to guide them. But Daniel Levy doesn't let any manager guide them. He guides the managers. That's where our problem lies. That's the problem.
He gives them like a year and a half, maybe, of trust, and then after that, if they haven't done something, I guess, then he's already considering moving on. It looks like.
But even then, he doesn't buy players specifically for those manager systems. He buys players that are good opportunities to sign in the transfer market.
He's an opportunist. He's an opportunist.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's the biggest problem as well, because you're always going to have the manager and the owner button heads. Do you know what I mean? A manager, I remember when Poch was in charge, Poch wanted his players in early. Poch always wanted a pre-season with his players. But you've got Levy in charge, and he's more interested in, I don't want to sign a player in June or July because, that means their contract starts early, and I'm going to have to start paying them a bit earlier. And so Poch missed out on a lot of players, bedding them in, getting used to his ideas, his philosophy, his attacking, getting his players. So it's nothing new. It's not. I was only obviously the season just gone past the last summer where we actually did our business early, shock horror, and that was probably because obviously A, Conte was in and he wouldn't have it, and B, we had a World Cup, so everyone was acting early. It wasn't just Tottenham. Every team was acting early and getting their players done. And that's why I was so frustrated. I was like, yes, we're finally doing it early. But then I saw everyone else doing it early. I was like, oh, man, what's the point? Cancels it out. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I agree, man. It's just the lack of, it doesn't matter. So sometimes I feel like it doesn't matter who's coming in. It's going to still be that interested FC. You know what I mean? We're going to be linked with a player, and then the whole summer's going to go past, and we're still interested in that player when we could be getting a player in, moving on to the next target. All right, we got our goalkeeper. Right, let's get a centre back. All right, we got our centre back. Let's get attacking mid. All right, we got attacking mid. Let's get another. Do you know what I'm trying to say? But instead, we're just on one play, and it doesn't matter who's in charge, because what Levy would do is just make another title, because that's what he's good at the moment. He's good at making loads of titles, and people just popping up with like, we've got a new football director of managing operations of health and safety. Like, do you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, bro, I don't understand. Like, it's so stressful. I just had enough. And like, yeah, it doesn't. That's how I feel at the moment. It doesn't really matter who comes in unless that manager is more or less, I wouldn't say a yes man, but they can just work off what they have in front of them. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the type of manager. That's the only type of manager that's going to work. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, you can't. If it's not a yes man, it ain't gonna work, man. It ain't gonna. I don't know. I
think there's a blend of being.
It's not going to work either.
No hope.
What we need, it's easy. What we need is someone who's perfect. And I think
leave it out. That's what we need.
Yeah, and then exactly that. But what I would also say though to you, Ash, is, and maybe just even to summarize, maybe this sort of this part that we've been on is, I think where it comes from is Daniel Levy's not in the position to ignore the fan base because he's not made the right decisions in the past, and we're not in the right sort of position in the first place where he can sort of ignore them. There's not any real trust that the fan base have towards him that he will make the right decisions to get us out of this sort of mess. And there's also no evidence to back him on that. So I think he has to take real consideration of maybe the fans' influence. He can't let that be everything. Like you said, it can't be the deciding factor, of course, but it should be taken into consideration. I think that's for sure, because gaining, in some sense, a bit of the fans' trust probably does go a long way in at least helping out the manager. But another thing I think we mentioned too is, right, he needs to also show trust towards the next manager that he brings in, because the next manager that he brings in could be the guy to point us in the right direction to where we need to go and where we want to be. But it also depends on getting that sort of trust and that autonomy and all those things from the likes of the ownership as well. And that's where I think maybe the two main things come from, is Levy has to take into consideration who the fans want, but he also has to give this next manager a lot of trust as well. Trust on both accounts.
Yeah,
I agree.
I'd agree with that.
Well, rapid fire time, guys. I've seen a bit in the news that the likes of Mark Gahey from Crystal Palace has been linked to us. And I know we need a big overhaul in the center back department. He will not do it. I don't think he's the only person that can save us. But is he good enough maybe to step in straight away for the likes of Eric Dyer? Like, that's what I think is most important, is the center backs we bring in need to be good enough for the first team. They can't just be sort of kind of debatable, kind of squad player, kind of like, I guess, Longley is maybe not a bad example, right? So what do we think with Mark Gahey? Start with you, Ben. Do you think he's good enough?
I think that he's a player that's going to have a big future. I very much like him. I've seen a lot of good things I like in him. I think he's still very much a raw talent, very, young English player coming up. Is he good enough to step in straight away? I think he's better than what we have. So in that sense, then yeah, I think he's better than Longley. I think he's better than Dyer, and I think he's better than Davis. But I still think, fans will still have a few frustrations with him in the early days, and I think it might take him a year or two to, get to be to that centre back that we want him to be. But I think Guehi and Romero in a back four could actually work really well. I have seen him get bullied a couple of times this season, but I think
he made a weird mistake against us for I think like Sonny's goal it was.
Yeah, he did. But I think for the most part, he has been impressive this season. So I would say bring him in. I'd be definitely for the signing for sure.
If he were in excess of, I've heard something, or at least seen something of around 40 to 45 million pounds, would that be a bit expensive in your eyes, Ben, or would that be around the price of English? Yeah.
Good investment. I think anything above 45 million is probably a bit too expensive, but you got to remember as well the English quota, we need players for that. So he's going to fill that void, and he's a good player for the future. So I think he'd be astute signing.
All right. What do you think, Ash? Mark Gahey or Mark Guehi? Is he good enough? Does he step into the team straight away?
I think he was meant to be what Tanganga was meant to be. Like, he's for me, the problem with him is his concentration. A lot of defenders as well. Concentration. If he can get that right and they can coach that, because like Ben was saying, he's still a raw talent, because he's got all the key components to be a top defender. He's got the height, he's got the physicality, he's got pace, he's strong on the ball. He knows when to slide tackle, so he's not like too rash, and he's not too like, a bit like Romero. Sometimes we're like, why did you do a slide tackle there, man? Oh my Lord, not everyday slide tackle, Like he knows when to kind of hold players off and use his body or use his arm and win challenges. I've seen him do that, and I've seen him like not be afraid to like do last ditch defending as well. So I like my defenders to defend first, but also with him, he can play it out from the back. I've seen him hit a couple balls out from the back. I've seen him bring it out from the back as well, under pressure. And he's someone that doesn't easily get rattled, even though he has been found out a couple times. But like I said, because he's a young kid, he's got a higher ceiling. And a good coach will get the best out of that guy. They really will. So I'm happy with him. We've been looking at him for a while. So it's not something like we just saw an opportunity and then, this is the player we want. We've been looking at him for a while now, and I know a few guys that behind the scenes that work at Palace and stuff. So they've obviously had a word with his agents and stuff, and so I think it's a real option with him going to Tottenham. But
they brought him in for around 20 million, I think, originally from Chelsea, or they brought him in for a fair amount. So the 40 million. Also could probably be explained by the fact that they would probably want to double their investment, considering they only just kind of brought him in, right? And knowing Crystal Palace, they are a bit of a selling club, but they would want to get a good return since he's only just been there so long. I think even like Joachim Anderson, feels like he's only been there so long too, but I feel like he's even been there like longer than Guehi, or has been there just as long. I'm not mistaken, but I don't know. Like he's only just arrived there too, so you probably do have to throw over a bit of cash for him, but some people are saying he could be good enough, but I am curious, though, like if he is that guy that will be given the trust by the next manager to step ahead of the likes of an Eric Dyer, these sort of established kind of guys in the Spurs squad, because we all know they're not good enough, but they are sort of sadly established sort of figures at the club, and that's what we need to know is like, can he immediately kind of get ahead of them? And
Yeah,
I guess we'll
100%.
find out.
I think 100%.
It all depends on the coach, if I'm being honest. It really does depend on the coach, whether they're how they treat the youth and how they develop them, how they bring them out. Like Poch was really big in giving youth and young players chances, do you know what I mean? Where some players, some managers, they weren't like the tried and tested era, like, you know what I mean? They actually want someone with a bit more experience. So yeah, that's what it is for him.
Last question of the evening, and then we'll wrap this up, everybody. If you haven't already, do smash that like button. Keep getting your comments in, everybody. And also as well, do thank Ash and Ben for giving up their time as well this afternoon and evening. But I'm going to call out your brother here, Ben. Sim was kind of, I thought, a bit generous on the David Raya kind of praise, because 40 million pounds for a guy that I feel like is 28 years old, not exactly the youngest of the keepers that we are looking at. He's not Mike Magnan's age. He's not like Paret's age. He's not that Georgian guy, Mamarshvili or whatever his name is. You know, he's not exactly the youngest, and he's only, I think his contract's up next season, 40 million. When I saw that was the price, Ben, I kind of thought that was a bit expensive. So I don't know. I disagreed with your brother when I heard the news update. What do you think? Are you in agreement with him, or with the way that I've just sort of phrased it? Do you feel like 40 million pounds is a bit expensive?
It might be on the more expensive side. You might be right there, but I think that the pros definitely outweigh the cons on this one. If I'm looking,
do you think he's better than the other options that you've seen maybe in the list?
Not maybe not better than me personally. I think he's a top keeper, and I think he can be on par or not, if not better, than the other keepers. But what he does bring you, he brings you a keeper that's Prem ready for the next 5 years minimum. And not only that, but he's also, I know he's Spanish, but he also takes up one of the English quota in the squad as well. So we're in desperate need of them. So I think get the deal done for 40 million. I mean, we've spent 40 million in much worse areas in the past before, I'll tell you that. I mean, I think for 40 million, it's a good option. I think it's a very good option.
Fair point. That usually is that amount of money that we usually like to waste a bit of money on. Fair point. Yeah. What do you think, though, Ash? I feel like David Raya, for me, I don't know if he's even top 3 on some of the lists that I've seen. I just feel like he's a good keeper, but might be a reason that he's never exactly made that big move yet to a bigger club. And I am curious whether, I think he deserves probably a move bigger than Brentford, but I don't know exactly. I think there's some of the other ones we've been linked to are probably better than him, and he's 28 years old. His contract's up next season. Feels like maybe this is a bit expensive for a guy, and kind of with all the things I've mentioned. And also, I don't know if you get 10 years. I think you probably get more, like, hopefully maybe 5, 6 years, maybe 7, hopefully, if he gets to 35 or something like that. But he turns 28 like in September next year, so he'll be 28 next season.
I mean, for goalkeepers, I think it's different when you look at that age, 28. Do you know what I mean? Some keepers haven't even hit their prime in 28. Do you know what I mean? And I think in the system, in the modern style of football, when we bought Lloris, obviously he was younger, but sweeper keepers were in fashion. And now, Raya is a sweeper keeper, but he also can play out from the back. And we desperately need a keeper that can do that. That's going to help the way we play football moving forward, in that it will help the defenders push a bit higher up in certain cases, because he is there to kind of sweep things up. And then also when we are playing out from the back, he can make a free. If we play a back 4, the 2 centre backs and the goalkeeper make a free. And that is crucial to tactics in modern day football, when you're trying to play out from the back, when you're trying to use that spare man, you're making that keeper the 11th man. So in terms of that, yeah, I'm all for it. And then actually goalkeeping itself, he's really good. Can't remember the last game that he played, but I watched it, and he pulled off 2 big saves that kept Brentford in it. And so, yeah, I mean, so in terms of actually doing your job, because as a goalkeeper, you want your goalkeeper to do his job, and his job is to stop goals from going in, and he does that well for me. So, like, when you're a good keeper and you can stop balls from going in, you're a decent penalty saver as well, and you can play with your feet, and you can play as a sweeper keeper. It's, for me, I'm so tired of like Spurs being so stingent on it's too much money, so we pull out the race of it, and then our rivals end up buying them because we know there was a few million apart, but we didn't want to go further. Sometimes, like, just get over it. Like, we might overspend in certain areas. But if it goes well, we're not saying, "Oh, we overspent on that player," blah blah blah. We'll be like, you know what, it was worth it. Do you know what I mean? When Liverpool bought Virgil van Dijk at 70 mil, do you know what I mean? Do you think people are talking about how expensive Virgil van Dijk is? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely not.
Celtic.
It also depends on, I think, the importance of that player that you're bringing in, right? Like for a center back, I think I don't really care what price we really spend on the center backs, as long as it's, you know, the quality that we need, because we need major surgery in that department. And to be fair, you guys make good points on goalkeeper too. Like we need to replace Hugo kind of ASAP, right? So whatever price might be the right price if you know he's the right guy to replace Hugo. For me, I don't know if David Raya is like my preferred choice, I guess, when it comes to sort of the replacements for Hugo. And when I heard 40 million, I did think that was a bit more expensive than I kind of imagined he'd be, because he is going next season for them if on a free. So he's likely, maybe it's the bidding war, I guess. Also, like you guys said, he's having terrific season for the likes in the Premier League, and it could be a bit of a bidding war, and they know that he could be going for a bit expensive price, and also the agents and all that good stuff.
Yeah, Man United want him, but they need to replace Van der Sar. And
He's good with his feet, and we need somebody like that as well.
They've identified him as a player. I remember before as well, Chelsea were interested in Raya. So it's a host of clubs.
They replaced Van der Sar a while ago, Ash.
Not Van der Sar. Not Van der Sar.
De Gea.
De Gea, man. De Gea, sorry. Van der Sar, old school. Yeah, sorry, De Gea.
I wish Lloris made the saves that De Gea is still making this season, because I think they're both victims of not being great with their feet and can let their team down.
Lloris made some top saves on the weekend, though.
He did.
Yeah,
he did.
That McAllister one, you wouldn't be saying that if that McAllister shot had gone in, or what was it?
That McAllister one took a naughty deflection. It really did. It was hard.
I feel like the ball just like went through him. It was almost like a video game where it was like, you know, like something just goes through, like, you know, like the ball just like physically just went through him. Like I didn't understand it. Like it was kind of like the Arsenal goal with Gabriel Jesus, where just like somehow, some way, you just let that go underneath him. Like I don't really get it. But I don't know. My Hugo glasses are so biased. My Hugo glasses are so biased.
Jack, who do you want? Who do you want in? Who's your guy? Who's your keeper?
I'm actually a big fan of David's man, Gavin Bazunu, just because I do think he's the future of how goalkeepers do kind of need to be nowadays. I think these days teams will press you all the way to the goalkeeper. You need a guy who's good with his feet. It's just something you can't ignore anymore. I think if you also want to play, I don't know if he's exactly ready. That's where we probably have left it a bit too late. And someone maybe like David Raya, a bit more experience in the Premier League than someone like Bazunu does, but it's also the age factor. Like I would rather have a guy that we can have for the next 10 to 15 years confidently. And maybe he might be a bit sort of young and maybe, I don't know, a bit unproven in some regard, but you've seen what also, I hate continuing to use the Gooners as examples, but Ramsdale, of course, was also quite young when they brought him in, and he's now basically England's future number one. You could look at him as, and I don't know, Gavin Bazunu, I get a similar vibe from. I think if given a chance and playing for a big club, also playing a style of football where you could get the most out of his sort of passing range, I think he is a top keeper. But I'd like the the Georgian guy. I'll just say the Georgian guy. I like him just because he's gigantic. So I've heard, kind of like a Forster. The Georgian Donnarumma, he was gigantic, so I do like those type of guys, but I do feel like we need somebody that's really good with his feet, because that's where I just see the game is headed. Nowadays, most teams in the top four, they'll press you all the way to the keeper, and you need to have a keeper who's comfortable with the ball, and also a keeper, right, that can just ping it over the top in any scenario and catch you out, right? That's what's so good about Ederson, is that he can just catch teams out with any sort of kind of ball over the top, and it's just important. I just think it's something that gets ignored. So whoever's whoever can be here for 10 to 15 years, maybe 10 years, 15 seems a bit of exaggeration. That's probably lucky if you get that much, but whoever can be here for 10 years, that's who I think I'd go for, even if they are a bit unproven. I'm just kind of I'm on that sort of route. But
fair enough.
Unless you guys have any final statements, get to plugging the channels and watch some Champions League later, lads. But Ash, tell us about Southview Coys, or anything, any shows that you're going to be on later that maybe people should know about, Ash.
Yeah, you can catch me on the Irish Hotspur every week now. I'm joking now. no, I'll be on Southview Coys. Yeah. So we're here. Marlon and Hass. You'll see me in and around that show to do like post-match talks as well. You'll see me on We Are Tottenham TV quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
I'll I'll be on there as well. And yeah, just wherever anyone else will have me. I'm just about. I'm about.
All right, follow him around, everybody. You'll be seeing plenty of them. We are Tom TV. Anything coming up on the channel that we should know about, Ben?
Yeah, a lot of rants about why we're not going to make top four and the silly state of the football club at the moment. A lot of complaining between me and my brother going on at the moment. So hopefully things will change shortly and we'll get back to the positive content that you know and love us for.
All right. I like it. I like it, everybody. Well, I think we'll leave it there, everybody. If you do want to see us later on the Irish Hotspur, I think maybe a podcast that could be coming out tomorrow if David is feeling a bit better. Do wish him well. Hopefully wish him better. Dave. I think he's on the mend, but don't want to wish him, or I don't want to predict too soon, but he should be recovering. So everybody wish him well and enjoy the rest of your evenings there, everybody. I think we'll leave it there. Hit that like button on the way up, please. And as always, come on, you Spurs and the fans we trust, like Mia likes to say.
Spurs. Come on, let's go. Big up.
Everywhere we go.